Now, more stories, insights, and analysis of Illinois policy and politics. This is Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project. Once again, your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan and Pat back on this edition of Rising, and we were talking about the mayor's race sort of in passing. Let's talk about it in more detail. Queen Sugar is in, Dopey Bill Daley is in. Perhaps there'll be more entrants. It's a crowded field. I don't think anybody really knows who is most likely to make a runoff. I think you could have 6 or 7 candidates, squished together between 15 and 20% of the vote. And so you see a lot of people holding their powder. Preckwinkle perhaps brings the highest profile to the race. I mean, the Daley name has higher profile, but present office holder profile. And perhaps the most natural constituency, although with Willie Wilson in the race, with Dorothy Brown in the race, if they are on the ballot and they stay, that pulls maybe up to 20-25% of the black vote away from Preckwinkle. If Lightfoot stays in, even more. I doubt Lightfoot will, but just 2 of those 3 candidates. So no matter how you look at the Chicago electorate, there are 2, 3, 4 candidates carving up the different sort of voting blocks or coalitions you would want to try to ascribe to one candidate. The public sector unions, well, you got Preckwinkle, but you got Chewy. School reformers, you got Vallis, but some people are talking about Daley, who are center-right. Old habits die hard. Preckwinkle, though, if she is the front runner, however weak she is as a front runner, there is strong reasons to vote against her. There are strong reasons to stop a Toni Preckwinkle if you care about the city of Chicago. And one of the best stories that I've ever heard about Preckwinkle came to me, ironically, from a former now Utah State Senator named Dan Lillenquist. I moderated a panel in 2013 for the Illinois Policy Institute, and Lillenquist recounted a story with a Chicago politician when he was at law school at University of Chicago about providing, and he was talking to the Chicago politician about providing free legal support for entrepreneurs that are otherwise underserved in minority neighborhoods around the city. Listen to him tell the story.
One of the more sobering experiences of my life was my first summer of law school. I was working with the Institute for Justice Clinic on Entrepreneurship down at the University of Chicago. We were trying to help inner city Chicago entrepreneurs launch their business. We had some great people with great ideas. And I went and met with the alderwoman of South Chicago, who's now in, I think, a much more powerful position. But I won't mention who she is. But I sat down with her and told her we were offering free legal advice to help people start up businesses. And she looked at me and she said, "I'm opposed to self-employment. You give these people false hopes that they could ever earn a living on their own." I was stunned.
Are you sure you don't want to mention who that alderwoman was?
Toni Preckwinkle.
I knew it was Toni Preckwinkle. She's opposed to self-employment, opposed to entrepreneurship. I mean, it's a remarkable statement.
It's an astounding statement, and when you take that statement combined with, I'm in favor of taxing everything, including soda pop, it shows what she really is, which is a socialist. She's a leftist, right? She believes that everything's the collective, everything comes from government. And particularly in a circumstance where African Americans in our city have been so downtrodden by and sold a bill of goods by their politicians, where this guy wants to come and say, "Hey, I'll help you start a business. I'll file the LLC. I'll get you up and going so you can be a self-starter." By the way, the more self-starting businesses there would be in the African American community, that's a problem for people like Toni Preckwinkle, because the more of those folks will start to say, "I don't want to be with Toni Preckwinkle. She's just going to drive me out of business." So she wants folks to be dependent. That's really the reason why she doesn't believe in self-employment.
And they paper over it. I mean, that was a moment of unusual candor from Preckwinkle or any other Chicago politician, but they papered over with the rap that you hear from politicians, even ones I like LaShawn Ford, state rep from the west side, which is what we need is a Marshall Plan for the west and south sides of the city. So again, government-driven, public-private partnerships, which aren't really so much private partnerships, except to the extent you make a few people rich because you don't have bottom-line sensitive spending because it's being driven by government. Rather than, as you say, incubators of entrepreneurship, cobbling together professional services that can be in-kinded to aspiring entrepreneurs that have a good idea and either need some startup capital or support, or the support services, or a combination of the two, and so it keeps us stuck in this binary of saying lack of jobs, lack of economic opportunity, being left behind. Government needs to step in and spend more of other people's money in spite of all that has been spent to no effect to this point.
That's right. The other thing I think that I find so interesting about this anecdotal story that you have with the senator is that when Preckwinkle said this to him, he was a first-year law student, right? So the truth comes out when she's talking to somebody that she thinks is going to be a nobody, but that nobody then became somebody, right? So when the guard is down, right, you start to learn how these people really think in these moments. That's why this is so instructive.
I'm opposed to self-employment. I mean, that is one of the most incredible statements I've ever heard in politics, and that's saying something in Chicago.